Welcome to Hepatica Falls Tree Farm. We're Randy and Koral Clum. We're Tree Farmers of the Year for 2017 in the state of Ohio. We have 152 acres here that we've been managing since 1993. And we've had 4 hardwood timber sales, almost 2,000 trees, about 500,000 board feet, and also a pine sale in 2011. So we wanted to invite people out, show us what we've been doing, and we're just glad to have everybody here.
Hiking around and hanging out.
Yeah, we have two tours, organized tours, the waterfalls tour and then a tunnel tour. So there's a lot of things to see on both tours.
Trails, not only do they provide you access and enjoyment, but they offer you management access to these places. Right. As this stand develops, and I always, when I'm working with landowners, what little I do, always recommend trails because it allows you access, it allows you to enjoy the property, and unless you can get to it, you're not going to enjoy it, you're not going to see what's going on, you're not going to find the problems, all those sorts of things. So a management trail system is very important to the property.
Obviously, with wildlife habitat being a large objective of most woodland owners, almost everyone that owns the woods has some sort of an objective that's geared towards wildlife habitat. Keeping the old trees around is often is going to be something that you can incorporate into your management, because obviously there's a lot of wildlife habitat in a big old hollow maple that's sticking around. Provides den tree, whatever, shelter for lots of different forms of wildlife.
What trees come out? What trees stay? Biggest trees go out. And what are those biggest trees? Probably oak in a lot of instances, especially from here south. As you go more south, you're going to see a lot more oak. And so we've got some bigger oaks out here. We've got a smaller oak right here. So when we cut this big oak, we got this younger oak to take over, right, Mark?
Maybe not.
This oak very well may be the same age. It probably got started at the same time. Why is it smaller?
Genetics. You didn't get the canopy.
Could be genetics, but there's probably a good chance the acorn came off the same tree as that one did.
He just didn't get the canopy.
He didn't get the canopy. He didn't get the light. Oak trees are plants. They need light to grow. The more they get, the faster they grow. So when you look at this, and over time, if we were to do another cut in here in a few years, take out the big trees, we might have a few more oaks that survive until the next round of cutting, and then they would probably be the next trees to cut, and then what would be left? How much oak, you guys see that sea of oak regeneration under there?
No.
None. So they don't like the full sunlight, they don't like the full shade, they're kind of like Goldilocks, they're in the middle. And they really do best in kind of intermediate light. So if we can get a little light down to the forest floor and we have a bumper crop of acorns, so we get acorns most years, and what happens to most of them? Deer, squirrels, turkey, mice, you name it. A lot of things like them.
Acorn weevils.
Acorn weevils, little worms in them. Almost every acorn I found in the last 3 weeks is full of weevils. So during the regular years, not many of the acorns survive. But once in a while we get that year where you can't walk. They're everywhere. You're skating out there. And when you see that, you'll get little oak seedlings started. And if they get some light, they got a chance. If they don't get light, they're probably going to die in a few years.
And when you do get these things opened up, we you know, we have to worry a lot more about invasive species on the western side of the state where I'm at. If we open up, we could do everything right, and then before you know it, you've got competition from things you weren't considering. So sometimes when you do open it up like that, it will kind of exasperate the problems where I'm at. It just depends on again, the more prep you do, the more planning ahead and thinking about the possible outcomes and consequences, the better off you're going to be, for sure.
Crop tree release is a practice that we started using a few years ago, where from the 90s there was some research done in West Virginia and some really cool researchers down there, but it's a practice where you're identifying first what you want out of your woods, and then once you know what you're trying to get out of your woods, then you know what type of trees. Hey Chief, sorry. He used to be my boss above me. So it's you find out what your objectives are. Maybe that's grow timber for lots of money. Maybe it's to grow oak trees for turkeys and things like that. I work for the National Wild Turkey Federation. But it could be a combination of things. But once you know what that is, then you go out in your woods and you try to select the trees that are going to help meet those objectives. If you want to grow, you know, white oak, then you'd be going looking for, and if you want to grow white oak veneer, you'd be going looking for very straight white oak that didn't have a lot of limbs on it, and you would go, and then that would be where you're going out and selecting a crop tree. Now that's all good, but you're just selecting a crop tree. Crop tree release is what you're doing to try to help that tree, one, survive better than the others, but also grow faster, put on more wood. From a wildlife standpoint, some of the research when they were doing this showed, some of it showed you increased acorn production twice, you doubled acorn production by crop tree release over the whole acre, not just off of a tree, but over the whole acre. There was also some research that said you could increase acorn production 7 times on white oak. I think that's a little exaggerated, but you know how researchers are, they can make those numbers. But the bottom line is you can increase acorn production by crop tree release.
I'm dealing with this more and more. A lot of this comes off of equipment, skidders, dozers, even mowers. You know, especially mowers. Things that, you know, when you're bush hogging the field out there along the roadside, you don't think about it. You bring the bush hog elsewhere on the farm. You're dragging that seed in, and this Japanese stiltgrass is a bear. You cannot, I mean, it is hard to kill. And the next, you know, it starts out on your skid trails, on your roadsides. Next thing you know, it's diving down into the woods.
This is a native stand of black walnuts. It occurred here naturally. These weren't planted here. They all showed up. Okay, mostly from squirrels. The nuts kind of lay here, and there's a creek there. Of course, when the water comes up, if there's nuts on the ground, guess where they're going? They're going downstream. So that's probably how these got here. But there are just as many. When I was working for Dave, in about a 5-year period, I covered I think every acre of the state. I logged in looking at over 10,000 black walnuts, both native like this and in plantations, and I selected 300 of them for our breeding program. That was 0.1% or 0.2%. This is what your breeding population is supposed to be, so that's the number I hit. So I was pretty picky, but that was for plantations. For people to plant out, and that would assure them not only success in terms of growth rate and form, but before you do that, and you want to look at this publication,
It's only a few bucks from the superintendent documents in Congressional Library. It has listed every soils type found in the state of Ohio, and there are 3 columns. This is suited, this is questionable, and this is don't even bother, you're wasting your time. Okay, this is not suited. As you can see, there's not too many that are suited. This soil that we're on is Orville. This is in the questionable. Okay, the reason is I took the soil probe and looked, and it's mapped this way. You're gonna run into mottling, which is where water comes up, stays for a little bit, and then goes down at about 9 inches. Now I found in that spot, it was between 12 and 15. But for walnuts to grow successfully and to continue to grow and flourish, you have to be able to take a soil probe and go 30 inches straight down, not find any mottling, not find a fragipan, not find any gravel, not find any bedrock. You gotta have at least 30 inches.
Maybe someday it'll be what we call old growth, where the trees are big and massive and they have holes in them or whatever. And we don't have much of that in this area anymore. There's a little bit here and there where they've designated a wilderness area or a wild area, a state park, but we need that. We need old growth because there's a certain ecosystem going on that doesn't otherwise have a chance to survive. .30-inch, 1,069 board feet, and it's almost perfect. That is. So I think probably that butt log would be a total yield of really nice
veneer log.
Veneer. That would be a veneer. Yeah.
Just the first log.
Probably just the first one. Yeah.
First 16.
Because you see some epichronic branches coming out.
Yes.
And undulations, some old knot holes, whatever. Yeah, that's a valuable tree. You probably could sell that white oak log for a lot of money. Maybe some chestnut from Europe and see how it does in this country. And so they brought it to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens and planted it there. And it was within a few years they started to see American chestnuts start to die. And chestnut had everything. It had nuts that were highly nutritious. You know, the best, almost the best protein outside of those big salad beetle grubs. So those are high in nutrition too. But chestnuts, high in...
Welcome everyone. My name is Levi Arnold. I'm a wildlife forestry specialist for the Guernsey Soil and Water Conservation District, or at least I pretend to be one most weeks. Right here behind me is something super cool. So what do you think this is? It's a vernal pool! You guys are sharp! So, does anybody know what a vernal pool is? Just in your own words.
It's only wet in the spring.
So typically in the spring, usually in the fall, but we've had somewhat of a dry fall so far, especially around this part of the world. We've got a seasonal wetland. That is the key term, is seasonal wetland. If this were to hold water year-round, we would have established fish populations. Specifically things like green sunfish or yellow bullheads. You know, things that I think would pretty much live in about a puddle of water in the middle of the road. When you say Quimby, yeah. They can survive in pert near anything. They're a pretty impressive species, but we don't want them in our vernal pools because our vernal pools have something a lot cooler, like frogs and salamanders and other amphibians and reptiles, of which add a lot of species diversity and importance to our woodlands and our forestlands. So, just imagine this having some water in it, you know, maybe ankle shin deep on me, not standing up here on my perch on a log. Haha, funny. We tell jokes here. But some species of importance that will really hang out around these vernal pools are things like this one. So who knows what this guy is?
Tree frog.
I heard tree frog. I'm not saying you're correct because you might not be. Any other things? Any other ideas?
Leopard frog. Maybe?
Leopard frog. I'm gonna let you guys think on a second and let me pull out my handy dandy noise making device. But I'll give you a hint, it goes peep.
Peepers.
Peepers! Peep!
That's a peeper.
Peep! Peep! Beep.
Spring peepers.
Beep. Spring peeper. So, spring peeper. Spring. Who said you've never heard him? Oh my goodness.
Never heard of the
Oh,
name.
you've never heard of the name. I'm like, oh my, they're everywhere. So spring peepers is Ohio's most abundant frog, and they are our smallest because this little guy, although this picture is blown up, is about the size. Yeah, this picture's not, it's not to scale, trust me. These guys are about the size of my thumb nail. So they're that small. They're really small. As you can see from the picture, they're the color of every single dead leaf ever on the ground. So they're extremely camouflaged. They're hard to see. This picture, you can't really do it justice, but here on the back of them, they'll have this dark cross. Their scientific name is Pseudacris crucifer. That, you know, here in science, we get pretty complicated. It's got a cross on the back. Let's call it Pseudacris crucifer. So it works out pretty well. It's easy to remember that. So there's your Jeopardy science word of the day.
One of those pets. 44 inches.
Yep.
Wow.
It is unbalanced.
And I think the railroad was here before the quarries. I don't know exactly when it was built, but I think it did come just before the quarries, probably for the timber and maybe the coal. I think coal was later though. But yeah, you know, it's really hard. A lot of folks will probably walk by this and not even know it was here. And you know, the Clums, they do a fantastic job with their trees, and they, you know, it's great with their historic resources too. They're really proud of what they have, and they, you know, want to take notice of it, and it's good to preserve what's here. And
But recently they took out a 36-inch red oak and another big sugar maple. They're Mother Nature will win eventually.
Yeah, it will. An old forester friend told me, you can't prevent a forest.